See you in about 4 minutes. Everybody, good morning. Looks like some people are hopping on here. We'll get started in just a minute. It is 5:59 on this glorious January 12th. Drop a comment down below so I can see that you're there. Looks like we got someone. Try not to cut my head off here. Nope. Oh boy. We'll figure it out. Good morning to all of my early people. It is 6 a.m., so that means we are going to start day, I believe this is 7. Yeah, because I have John chapter 7, so hopefully it's day 7. I am so excited to be with you this morning at 6 a.m., and it's really exciting for me because it's a Sunday, and Sundays are always the best, and so I get to start a little earlier than normal, not too much earlier, with John chapter 7. And actually, before I get started, I'm really Thankful we lost power last night right around 11 p.m. And I thought I was going to have to do this by candlelight, which would have been slightly creepy, but not probably more creepy than I've been in my life before. So thankfully we got power restored. I don't know if it was a metaphor for John chapter 7. We're going to figure this all out as we go along in these next 15 minutes or so. And so, man, these first 6 days have been really awesome. I hope you've got something out of it as well. Also, if this is about the only quiet spot in my house, I was going to go live from the bathroom, but even only having one bathroom, you just never know when a 6-year-old's going to come barging down the steps ready to fire. So actually, we're in Mr. Finn's room, which has not got much use, but it's a quiet place. And so we can start going into chapter 7. Once again, if you want to leave a comment down below so I can see it, I think that's how that works. And if not, we'll just go from there. So when I read John 7, there's a couple themes that I wanted to touch on in this chapter. We're not going to obviously read the whole chapter. But the first theme that I want to talk about is this theme of time. Okay, of time. So the chapter starts off with the heading Jesus goes to the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, the Feast of Tabernacles, if you read about it a little bit, was this week-long celebration, usually in September or October. And it was the celebration of God's faithfulness to the Israelites during their wilderness journey and such with Moses. And so his disciples, his friends, want him to come down to this. And before we get into the Feast of Tabernacles, honestly, this kind of 21-day fast for me personally so far has kind of been like a Feast of Tabernacles. God is guiding my family through a wilderness journey right now. Many of you who are probably watching or who will watch this later know of the wilderness my family has kind of been through in this past year. And so this 21 days has been an opportunity for me to really thank God and really be mindful about the times we've been through and that we're yet to go through. And so his friends, his disciples, they say, "Hey, Jesus, come! It's the Feast of Tabernacles." And Jesus, in what is Jesus' shade, is what I would say. Or I actually preached a message to the teens about savage Jesus. This is just another opportunity of Jesus being savage, and I love it. But Jesus' brothers said to him, "You ought to leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples may see the miracles you do. No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. Since you are doing these things, show yourself to the world, for even his own brothers did not believe in him." And Jesus says this in verse 6, which just strikes me as this whole theme of time comes out in this chapter. "Therefore Jesus told them, 'The right time for me has not yet come. For you, any time is right.'" I love that, actually. It's like, Jesus is like, "Hey, for you, guy, any time is okay to do something. But for me, I'm a little different. The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify that what it does is evil." Basically, Jesus is saying, hey, I call out what needs to be called out. You go to the feast. I am not yet going up to this feast because for me, the right time has not come. Having said this, he stays in Galilee. And then he does something really confusing to me. And this is part of what this 21 days is to talk about things that are confusing. One of the things Jesus does is kind of confusing. He says that, and then immediately in verse 10 it goes on. And I'm reading the NIV version. I usually use NLT, but I like some of the verbiage in here of the NIV. "However, after his brothers had left for the feast, he went also, not publicly, but in secret." And so it's this theme of time, right? Time is something that all of us it's just a commodity that this chapter made me think about time for whatever reason. So Jesus goes, right? And we'll get back to time in here in just a second. He says, no, I'm not going. Then he goes. And then he says he's going to go in secret. But then as you continue reading in chapter 7, he begins teaching. Kind of hard to keep yourself a secret when you start teaching. And so Jesus does something that's a little confusing. It's kind of an odd schedule of events, as we said. And so for the next 1/3 of the chapter or so, actually, it kind of discusses people seeing him, hearing him, some of their thoughts, like this guy's the guy that they say they is, and everything. And in fact, people even figure it out, because it's obviously not hard. Jesus is Jesus, kind of a hard guy to keep secret. And authorities even are contemplating and even try to arrest him, but they can't because it's not the right time. And so, like I said, this whole theme of time really stuck out to me, and it made me think, man, it's such a precious commodity, right? We say this all the time. We talk about it all the time. We say, man, I just wish I had more time. If I just had more time, I would blank, 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 dot, 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 or whatever, something like that. And so I did some basic Google searching. I'm a pro at Googling. You can just ask my wife. If I don't know the answer, within about 10 seconds, the internet will tell me a answer. Whether it's the correct one or not, I'm unclear. It doesn't matter. But time in Google tells me that we have 8,760 hours in a year, which equates to 525,000 minutes or so. And so I just kept reflecting more and more and more about time. Like I could not get that theme out of my head when preparing for this. And so I think about this. In life, we are able and very willing, okay, and I'm not getting political or anything, but it's just a fact that we're able and willing to go into money debt, chasing this happiness, right? We can get new car, new house, phones, etc., whatever. We don't actually have to be able necessarily to have the money that we need for something right away. And so we can pay it back and more with a little interest and stuff without much loss. But time, that's not something that we have the ability to get back. In fact, we frequently want more of it each day or week. You hear people say, well, if there was only 30 hours in a day, or there was only 26 hours in a day or something, I would be able to make more money, or I would get fit. We're in January. We're in the time of goals and resolutions. If I just had more time, if January just had 30 hours a day, I'd be able to go to the gym. I'd be able to meal prep all of the things that I need to do. I'd be able to lose weight, I could cook, I could clean, etc. And so we think about this. And honestly, I promise you, I'm not just speaking to you, I'm speaking to myself. I mean, that's why I thought about it so much, because I thought about sometimes how I spend my time. And so I'm guilty of this phrase. I have 3 kids and a job and a wife and hobbies and interests, but then I have all these other responsibilities. And so then I did something that wasn't comfortable, as I looked at screen usage. And boy, if you're ever just feeling froggy, I would encourage you to open up your phones. Your smart devices all have them now. And check out your screen usages. And let me tell you, it wasn't pretty for me. Those hours that are spent on social media, on games, on Pinterest, on whatever it is for you, they add up. They add up a lot. Hours a day on social, we spend hours and hours and hours a day on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, whatever it is, whatever your poison of social media is. And social media isn't just a poison. There's a lot of great things that happen of it. Just like this, we're able to broadcast on Facebook at 6 a.m. on a Sunday because of social media. But the fact remains is that oftentimes our usages are kind of absurd for one day. And so I looked at myself. I checked my own times out, and it was a little bit staggering. And so what I decided, and after looking at this and really being challenged, is that I would spend on my phone more time in the next, I guess it's 11 days from now, or no, or 14 days. Sorry, we have 14 days left in this. I would spend more time reading the Bible or reading commentaries of scripture, whatever, just getting that material spiritually, than I do on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. I looked and I average 92 pickups a day on my phone. 92 pickups. Obviously I'm not picking my phone up while I'm sleeping, and so then you start breaking stuff down and getting nerdy with it. And I'm averaging a number of pickups every hour. And I thought to myself, I'm picking up my phone 92 times a day. That doesn't mean I need to pick up my Bible 92 times a day, but I better be spending some real time in there. And so I wasn't expecting to read chapter 7 and come and take out of this passage like, hey, Jesus was talking about timing. It's this perfect timing. But I'd like to challenge you. I'd like to challenge myself for the rest of this 21 days to spend more time reading scripture or commentaries, like I said, than you spend on social media. It comes down to a time management thing, and frankly, it comes down to sometimes matters of the heart. We'd rather spend time in social media than we would in the Word. And so you have two ways to do this challenge successfully. You either spend less time on social media. You say, hey, I'm going to give it up for outside of this fast and being able to watch this. Maybe I give it up and I limit it to 30 minutes a day. Or you just have this biblical infusion like no other, where you spend 4 or 5 hours in the Bible. Because I've seen some of my teens' screen times, and I imagine that although we like to rag on them sometimes for their generation, I bet our generation and even the ones older than me are still doing plenty of time on that. And so going back to chapter 7, the other thing that really stuck out came out of verse 37. And this is really one of the most great invitations ever given, really, by Jesus. And it's so powerful. And so it occurs on the last day of the feast. And actually, when I was reading about this and reading into a commentary, so this was actually probably, scholars debate between this being the end of day 7 or day 8. But the prior 7 days, water from the pool of Siloam had been poured out on the altar to remind folks about the water that God would miraculously provide in the wilderness when they were, wandering and eating food and water. And so Jesus does this. Most believe at the 8th day, which is after all of that, after people would have seen water being poured out. And so it says, on the last and greatest day of the feast, Jesus stood and said in a loud voice, if anyone is thirsty, and actually the NLT version, it talks about shouting, I believe. If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, streams of living water will flow from within them. And it talks a little bit later by, obviously it's not a physical kind of water that Jesus is offering. And man, that is just so powerful. It's so powerful to hear that invitation. It's so powerful when Jesus did it at the end of the feast, after people would have seen this water. And Jesus, who his whole ministry for the most part is thought of as being this kind, gentle, soft-spoken spirit, he does something where he gets up and he shouts. And like I mentioned before, we did this series called Savage Jesus with the teens. And I wanted to show the teens, and I hope you know as well, that Jesus was not just this like hippie-loving kid, pet-loving person with long hair. Like, he was who he needed to be, unapologetically. And so Jesus stood up, and where he did it was right by the temple. And he shouts and he tells them that he is offering them something to quench their thirst, and not their physical thirst, but this spiritual thirst. And see, to thirst is not to have something. That's what I took out of that too, is that Being in a state of thirst does not mean you have something. It actually means you're deficient of something. You're deficient of water. And Jesus knows that people are deficient in this situation. He knows that spiritually they are deficient and lacking something that only He can provide. And see, this thirst that He's offering was not bound by gender. It was not bound by race. It was not bound by economic status. It was not bound by any of those things. It was free to have for anyone, but you must accept it. And you see, that's the thing that so angered a lot of people, I imagine, is that this was something that was for everybody. You couldn't buy it with your money. You couldn't buy it with your influence or the power that you had. Anyone could come and freely accept that. And see, I've found that, man, this past year I've been yearning. I've been thirsty. And during this situation with my son, for those of you who don't know, we have 3 boys, and our youngest, who's almost 13 months now, he's been in the hospital the whole time with some complications, and it has been a tough year. It has been a trying year, and there has been things that I or my wife have turned to in times of stress that people or situations, and it's just like, man, you know what? God just offers us this thirst. We're thirsty for something, but we kept trying to drink other things. I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm not talking about those kind of things, but I'm talking about in a metaphor of life. Like, you just look in all of these places, but what the reality is the thirst quenching that Jesus offers is what we need. It's what we need consistently. It's this daily bread. And I was trying to survive for this whole year and say, God, just get me through the year, when I really just needed to be told time and time and time and time again that, listen, I provide daily bread. Jesus gave daily bread. God gave daily bread to those in the wilderness. He gave daily water. He provided their needs daily, not yearly. And so that was a challenge for me. And so this morning, I would love for you to drop in the comment box what I can pray for you for. Today, I'm praying specifically over everybody as I fast, is that we really consider the time that we have. It is just one of the most precious commodities that everybody, regardless of how much money you have or not, has the same amount of. And it's how we choose to use that time that is so important in our lives. How we choose to use our time. And I understand there's a lot of things in life that come about and come to us and stuff that maybe others don't have. But we all get the same 24 hours in a day. And so my prayer for you specifically, before you drop comments, and I will respond to every single one of the comments and pray for you, is that as we've read chapter 7 and we think about this issue of time, is that we really value it, and especially these next 14 days in our fast, start building up some habits where we're spending more time in the Word than we are in Facebook, that we're spending more time reading and praying and meditating than we are trying to put filters on Instagram or Snapchat. That we're spending time, with our kids or with our spouse or with our significant other, going through a study, than we are finding recipes on Pinterest and looking at all of these perfect lives, perfectly framed lives of other people in the social media world. And so remember, Jesus gives us this great invitation that anyone who is thirsty, He provides that. And that is such a powerful thing. Today, you have this great opportunity here in just about 2.5 hours. Be Hope Church, we have 9/11 services, and it is incredible. It is so incredible. As the high school pastor, I have the opportunity to sit in the very front row and experience these services and the power that worship brings and the message and all of these things combined. And that's part of Jesus' invitation, is He says, I know you are thirsty, and you have tried in your life to put so many other things to quench that thirst, but only He can provide that thirst relief. And so if you're not local to Beaver Creek or Fairborn or soon Ironton here in a couple months, like, man, you have the opportunity to watch right here where you're watching right now on this live stream at 9 or 11. And it is just a powerful time, and everyone is welcome to the table. That's the amazing thing. That's what I love about this church, is that everybody has a place. Everybody is welcome, and no matter what hurt, habit, hang up, to use a term that our CR friends use, that you may have, everybody has a place at the table, because Jesus offers a place for everybody at the table if they accept his gift. So I'm going to hop off of here. I will look and respond to every comment that is dropped down here. Share this with a friend. Invite them to participate in the rest of this. And I will see some of you at 9 or 11. And the rest of you I will connect with online. Have a great day.